Yes.
Hey,
Who's next?
I have a hot take for a different topic. Is that syrsoN leaving big in the long term will help them because the way that this whole move happened. So syrsoN just to me in the last 2 years or so, or basically as soon as land play started again, syrsoN would be in and out, and actually even during the online era, he'd be kind of in and out of actually going to their boot camps. He'd be not necessarily like he'd be pretty shaky on LAN, you would say. And I gave him a pass for a while, but I think that syrsoN, to me, just he reads so much like these these kind of like kids that I used to play with when I was coming up in the scene, where it's like they're really, really skilled, but they're also super emo. And it just seems like that's just been syrsoN to this day. Like he's just constantly like he wears his emotions too obviously. And even though he's like, literally a stone faced person, he'll always just kind of act like nothing's going wrong. But I imagine that with Big on the inside, he probably was like one of the guys that would just sort of no calm or just be hard to deal with. And this is not even with insider information or anything like that.
Okay.
It's just kind of like looking at what's going on with him all the time. Like the not showing up to the boot camp stuff is so ridiculous to me when they have those facilities and you're in the same country. Like you don't. It's not that. It wouldn't have been that hard to ever do that. And so what I think happens to Big when they're playing with a guy like that is that, yes, you have to just almost accept the fact that he's just super skilled and you're going to let him kind of walk over you in terms of treatment and what you can actually tell him in terms of like, here's something we can do new as a strategy. Here's something new. We want to do this. We want to try that. And then I imagine that he'd have some pushback because I noticed that with syrsoN, some of the plays that he was making on like Mirage, for example, were like the same plays I've seen him make for 3 years. And I don't doubt, I hugely doubt that Gobby and Tabson didn't go to syrsoN and say, hey, we want to try new stuff with you. We want to put you in new positions. And he kind of was like, I probably don't like to do that. And that's probably why he was inconsistent too, because he just kept going to his same plays over and over again. And this is, again, so much speculation, but it's like when you have like a young player like Hyped, who they're bringing as an opper, Hyped is nowhere near as skilled as syrsoN, but I imagine he's much more malleable, moldable, that they're going to be able to coach him a lot better, and that because of that, in the long run, Hyped will increase his skill over time, and then Big can at least come together more as a team and in terms of their philosophy, bring new things to the table, and it'll energize everybody in a way that it's like 7 steps back, but eventually you could take 8 steps forward, although the trajectory is quite long.
The problem that I have with the 7 steps back is like even if you get 7 steps forward, you're still gonna be in the same position where you're today. So if you take 8 steps forward, then you're just gonna be 1 step ahead than you were today. So for me, that's a no. But the thing is, like, if I can agree with your take, if only syrsoN, we know that syrsoN was a psychological burden to the team so much that they couldn't play like that anymore. So he's gonna leave, and they're just gonna be freed in their minds and whatever, right? They're gonna be feeling better. There's not gonna be tension. There is not gonna be conflict. There is not gonna be anything, right? Then yes, they will be better, no matter the off. But if that's not the case, and he just benched himself for whatever the reason is, they don't have enough firepower even close to any of the bigger names. Not even the big names, just bigger names. If they stick to the German lineup. So if they brought this kid like Hype, yes, okay, that's cool. I don't know who he is. He's from the academy team. Haven't seen him play. Can he? If he was any good in terms of like tier 1 good, we would already know about him, and he would already be there, considering the issues they had with syrsoN and the bootcamp. For me, that is absolutely unacceptable, unless it's a medical issue or something. And even if it's a medical issue, I just get another offer and, I don't deal with that shit. Like, this is like Duncan said, this is not a friendship clubhouse, whatever, it's a fucking, business. It's work. We want to win titles. The money is involved. I don't have to pamper your ass every time and think about your emotions every single morning when I wake up. Are you going to come to the practice emo? Are you going to come to the practice, in a good mood? That's another burden for me. I don't need that shit. And what does that mean? That you're going to be like emo on the match day if you wake up on the wrong foot? And all this practice that we had, like it's down the bin just because you woke up with a bad mood. I don't need that. Like, you can go fix yourself any way you like it. I'm going to offer you help in the beginning. If I don't see that you are doing anything to help yourself, I don't want you in my team. I'll take the 7 steps back, 3 steps, whatever. I'll get a lesser offer, but I don't have to worry about that shit anymore. I'll have to worry about making the new guy better, and that's what I can do. But I can do is like be your therapist, be your mother, be your like fucking wizard that I can just magically solve your problems. I can't. You have to solve it yourself. But we don't know what's the whole thing behind syrsoN. Maybe we will do in sometimes. Why wasn't he on the boot camps? What happened there? Why is he inconsistent on the thing? But overall, if they stick to a German lineup and they are not, they were not like too, much burdened by his problems with like team, then I don't see them being any better and even worse than what they are right now, and they're not doing so well. And if they go to an international lineup, now that can work. They certainly have enough money to acquire some of the decent players, and they have the Blast partnership, and they have a good organization with good facilities and like the structure in it. So if they go to international, I can see them being better, and this move making sense. If they go German, they will drop off.
The problem with this whole thing about the big org is what Kassad just said at the end there, as far as I know, is not really on the table. Because if you notice, you might have seen, if I ever do that thing, I've done it loads of times over the last 3 or 4 years, I always do a tweet where it's like, imagine what tabseN could have done in another team. And they all rush to go like, no, but look what he's doing for German Counter-Strike. But he just cares about putting his team on the map. Well, then the problem is, if you just at the end pivot and go, we're international, and then you have success, it's like, what was it all for? You know what I mean? Like, look, for me, I would have done it. So I think they're somewhat stuck to the idea they're going to be a German team. So if they're doing that, that's why I don't like this move personally. Even though, like I'm not against the idea. Like, here's the silly thing. Because in theory, they want to play tactical Counter-Strike. There's a world where actually a lesser AWPer could be better for them if it was just like the super stable AWPer. Because people might know this. This leads into one of my classic rants. I actually think the area that for newer fans of CSGO, that people like Zwu and fucking Simple have ruined Counter-Strike for you, is the joke is the reason why Device was even called like the best AWPer even when those guys were around. It's because that's the way he plays is the way an AWPer traditionally played, except normally the AWPer isn't even that mobile. You just stay at a site and you do a bunch of different normal spots and you hold this angle every time so the site mate knows you've always got that line of sight, and if he sees you there, he knows which flash to throw or where to back off and all. Like, the joke is normally the ops what should be the most boring, predictable guy, and what makes it predictable is that he hits these shots every time, and you can that way you can play around him. So you can do that with a lesser AWPer. My problem is syrsoN always was that style, more like the Henny style, where it's just like everything's like a super flick. And the problem with that type of AWPer is the reason they'll always be fool's gold is because the highlights look too good. When you take out all the misses, it's a bit like certain, like I'll tell you, the joke is, you might know this, Maui, in the modern day, the reason why certain like old school players from the 2000s get mad over it, like Allen Iverson, for example, is because in the highlights, they don't show all the misses. You don't see the 20 shots he missed to make the awesome 14 shots. You know what I mean? So you just see the 14, you're like, holy shit, this guy was mad underrated. It's like, no, not if you know the context, like what he did in the team. Like, he was a chocker. He just was. So it's the same thing with people like syrsoN. The problem is, if you watch the games they go off, they're the best player in the team. They're fucking amazing. The problem is they have games where they do fuck all, and that is the reason they don't go forwards. But the reason I do think if you're big, the joke is beggars can't be choosers. Because go look at the last 2 majors. He's the whole reason they were even at the major. What he did is, when he goes to tier 2, like the RMR, he just smurfs. He just shits all over everyone, and you're like, finally. But then you go to the major, and it never happens. It's always like right back to like a bang average rating, bunch of like bad games. A map whale just have 5 kills. By the way, he's getting a bunch of ops in these games. They're forcing ops in his hands, of course. So my problem in general is I do think they're an example of a team where I just don't know who's coming through the door that's good enough. Because even if that guy was stable, now the pressure's on all the riflers. And the one thing they don't have, unfortunately, is like a cadre of superstar riflers, right? So at the moment, he's really the only like super talent they have beyond tabseN himself, who's getting up there. So I think the thing with big is I think they're in a really tough spot. Sadly, I think they've chosen it themselves. Like, it's why I wouldn't do that whole go down with the ship if it has to be German. Because like the angle I don't think they thought about is, are they really cool living with if in 5 years this is the highest they ever get, and they never go further, they never really do make an impact on a major or never do get close to a big trophy? Because if they are, fine, but like to me that's not professional Counter-Strike. You're doing something weird there. It's almost like you have some other weird angle that you're trying to, it's like a movie, you're trying to make a cool storyline come true or something, you know, which look, if you do, it'll be the greatest storyline for potentially possible for you, but I feel like it's so implausible at this point in time, you know. And they've tried a lot of talents, let's be real. They've had a lot of people come through the door.
I also feel like it's a little bit, like you said, that angle where, like, why, if I'm tabseN and I signed a 5-year deal, you know, with Big recently, and to keep the German team, and then you bench yourself and leave the team. And why the fuck did I sign my deal? Like, I can go anywhere. Like, it's not really, very, I don't know. It's a strange thing. I don't know what they're going to do, but it's definitely in a not good spot. I honestly see some sort of like, this when they come back after a month, it's like, oh yeah, I have thought this through, and and then they're gonna miss the Paris major because of it or some shit. Like, it's honestly a possibility, but yeah, it's a tough spot.
Because, by the way, that is the one area that guy did have his biggest weakness in. It's like the flaw of his game was just terrible. It could just go so far down. It was nuts. Which I've always said that's the part that I don't get. Like, to me, Rifler, you can be streaky. I assume you're not like the fucking lurker or something. If you're like the primary AWPer, we've got to have a base level of consistency, surely. Like the obvious examples, I'll give you the next guy, because funny enough, he's also in a formerly German team. Torshi's the next one. Torshi's the next syrsoN. Get ready. Because the same shit, the highlights look banging, don't they? But then when it's that like third map where you just need like a consistent overpass CT side, and I just want like 12 AWP, he's going to get you 8, and then you're going to lose the game. You know what I mean? I think it's I think people underestimate it. If you notice, it's why I always bang on the AWPers who are like average. Not bad. It's not that any of them are bad. But the reason I bang on the AWPer that's average is I do think it's the biggest cap in tier 1. I think the difference between the true like top 5 AWPers and like, put it this way, even people like Jame are levels above syrsoN because of the consistency, in my opinion. Even though I've no doubt syrsoN could hit shots Jame could never hit in his entire life. But the point is, that's not what CS is. It's like, in that way, it's a bit like basketball. It's not about hitting the hardest shot ever. Like, the joke is, you don't have to. If you play great team CS, you hit all the easy shots, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you mentioned Device. Device was the best for a reason. Like, besides the fact that he was hitting all the shots that he was supposed to hit, the guy was really good when it comes to rotations. The utility was like unbelievably good. Individual utility, not like let's throw 2 nades over the wall. It's like his smoke timings, molly timings, flash timings are always like useful, and that's gonna put you in a good spot to get a shot or 2 more than those 8 that you were mentioning, like for Torsy, because Torsy is not even close when it comes to like rotations and utility to any of the top tier offers. Surely he can hit a good shot, he's sharp and everything, but it's not all about that. Obviously, I guess tier 1 teams.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.